I've always been very perfectionistic about stuff, and I don't release stuff unless I'm satisfied with it. But I think that has taken away from my identity.
Once we get an idea, that's like the new thing in your head.
Yeah.
That needs to be done as soon as possible, because you never know when your next idea is going to come. Hi, my name is Sheran.
Hi, my name is Ben.
And this is the Creative Odyssey Podcast.
We're here to talk about the creative process.
The good,
the bad,
and the ugly.
But more importantly,
we're here to create together.
Whether you're a creator, a dreamer,
or just curious about the creative process,
explore with us
as we figure out what it means to be a creative
and build a community
that celebrates the creative journey. Let's get started.
All right. Well, welcome back. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks for joining us. Just wanted to kind of recap last episode. We were talking about understanding whether or not you're a creative, and even talking about going as far as to asking others if you're a creative or not, what they think.
Yeah, people you trust.
People that you trust, not just strangers on the street. But if you missed that episode, feel free to jump back, check it out. I think it was a good conversation that we had. But we're going to be continuing that topic today, more along the lines of, now that you know that you're a creative, or at least you kind of think you are, what to do and how to embrace that creative identity.
Correct.
And now that you know that you are creative, what are the steps in doing that?
Absolutely. So first of all, congratulations if you figured it out. That's important.
It is important.
But then second of all, it's now you have the freedom of figuring out who you are as a creative. And this is where we're at. And because the most important thing is creativity is expression of who you are inside, what's going on inside, whether you're sad or whatever, happy, whatever. At the end of the day, it's literally an expression. So I think the simple thing is you need to now be completely free to just create whatever it might be. This is the phase where don't care about what other people think. Don't care about what you think sometimes too. Just create at this point. That's step one for sure.
Yeah. And that freedom is something that a lot of people don't. I feel like it's hard to get over that hump into just being freely creating because of all the voices, not only externally, but internally. Most people are their own worst critic.
Right.
So it can be quite a long process to get through that. And I know me personally, there's still steps that I'm trying to overcome about that, just being completely free to create. But as far as the creative identity goes, what does the creative identity mean to you?
So I think when I hear the phrase creative identity, I think I used to get it confused from your unique creative voice versus your creative identity. So the simplest way I could make it is when your sister-in-law told you about me, it was like, hey, Ben, you should meet Sheran. Like, he's like you. He does woodworking. He plays music, all of that stuff. That's kind of your creative identity. Like, that's simple right there. Like, same vice versa, I feel like. Because same way, when she told me about you, it was a simple. Like, I'm like, oh, that's all I needed. I didn't care who you were. I didn't care. Like, it didn't matter to me. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, this person is like me, a creative. That was the creative identity. A person who creates for the sake of creating just because they want to.
Yeah, that's so cool that you mentioned that about just understanding the third person perspective without even me being there. And I had the same thing from her. She's like, oh, you would love Sheran.
Right.
He's into woodworking. He does video and music and all this stuff. And I kind of felt the same way too. I was like, oh yeah, he is a creative. But at the same time, we have the vast differences in understanding what that means. And that's kind of what I really want to talk through and break down today. the difference between what you and I think of what creative identity means, or even like like you were saying, the creative voice. But all that to say is, when Rosie told me, when she's like, "Oh, you would love Sharon," I was like, "Oh, woodworking." I immediately put my own understanding of what woodworking is, my own understanding of what video is, and that's easy to do. But it still made me excited because I love all those things. So
Yeah, because that's interesting. You mentioned that because we try to frame somebody else from our own perspective. I mean, that's human interaction, but I think
Right.
like even in woodworking aspect like, oh, okay, do you do like actual woodworking, or do you just like engrave, or do you make like little trinkets, like there's all these
Oh my gosh. We could have a whole episode on that.
Exactly, right? But at the essence is, I think I've gone away, which I'm super grateful, because I was kind of more like in that realm of thinking as well. Yeah, because I used to burn like pine wood and like resurface that, and to me it was art. To me it was beautiful, and it was this denser wood after you burn the wood. It's
Yeah.
waterproof, all that stuff. Yet a person who works with hardwood looks down at me and be like, "You're working with pine. That's not even real wood."
That's so funny. Just the type of medium that you work with suddenly disqualifies you or doesn't make you at that level as
Right.
somebody else, which I think is just ridiculous. But in the same vein, it's like I've definitely had that before, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this creator does this and I only do this, so there's no way that I'm at their level, or that I would enjoy working with them, or vice versa. It's like, oh, they're just doing that. That's cute.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way as a society, even in the creative world, like looking at YouTubers and things like that. Like a lot of young people are coming up with making cinematic stuff and storytelling and stuff like that. It's because we've made so much progress in this creativity understanding like spectrum. I think to like anybody can, as long as they put their like as long as they have a story to tell and they tell it well, and they use whatever medium, however they want to. That's and you're effective at that. That's a creative identity. A person who just expresses themselves and they have a story to tell and they just do it
Right.
with whatever they have, and like I forget the name of the creator. This young guy, his DSLR got water in the lens had some water got into it because he was on a train, and
Wow.
it was the lens was kind of damaged but has this cool glare to it. So this kid kept on like recording it, and like he was on Jack Conte's the podcast.
Really?
How did you make it? Like spaghetti something.
Okay. Yeah. Jack Conte's
So the
podcast.
point is, I'm so grateful. I wish it was like that when we were young. But I'm grateful, nevertheless, that we are at a point in the creative world to be like, okay, like anybody, as long as you are willing to express yourself, whatever you're feeling through art, some kind of art or some kind of whatever, problem solving, creative thinking, whatever, you have a creative identity. A person who does that.
That's a very good point. It's interesting to me as you're talking about that. I'm thinking about several Instagram reels that I've seen in the last year or so, and you might laugh at this, but they're these. I would say most people would say that they're these ridiculous art installations, where one in particular, a guy fills up like 12 buckets full of sand, stacks them on top of each other, and then pokes the bottom one, and then the sand pours out of it, and then they all fall over. That's his art installation.
Yeah.
And so many people are like, that's not art, that's not creative. And maybe it's not to you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll fall victim to that, be like, that's not creative.
Yeah.
But still, like, for him doing that, probably just like seeing everything collapse under its own weight, the sound that it makes is probably something that he's like, now that is like, to me, like, I like making that. Making that happen.
To me, what's more interesting is his odyssey of getting to that point of like,
Yeah.
like it must have taken him a long time to get to the point of like confident enough to say like, you know what, I'm gonna stack all these things, and because there is so much beauty in it. Because I don't know, for me it's like this kind of, if I think about it, it's this like when you mess up in life, like you make a really bad mistake and you see your everything just fall apart. To me, that could be like powerful.
Yeah.
And granted, I used to be like this. I used to like look at art like that and like, oh, I could do that. But I realize it's more because there's a self-expression inside within,
Yeah.
So I'm actually very curious now. You're a very creative person, obviously, and I don't know how many people know, but Ben has a TikTok channel called Sound of the Day. When I came across that, I was like blown away. Like I reached out to him like, dude, you gotta do this more, and like I'll help you like video it, whatever it might be. So yeah, talk me through that, like
yeah,
the genesis and all of that. Yeah.
So it's funny. I really appreciate how much you enjoy it and appreciate it as well. There's nothing like being understood by another creative, and like not only just the final product in and of itself, but the whole process. You understand how what goes into it. But anyway, so I'll kind of start at the beginning, where I remember watching TikTok, scrolling through TikTok, and there was a channel that I came across called Could Be the Move. I think they're hilarious. It's a comedy channel. They've really grown a lot recently, but it inspired me to do something similar. I wanted a short form, very dry sarcasm, funny, ironic, almost like when somebody watches that, they're like, what? Like some type of weird reaction like that. Like what? But also chuckle, whatever. Yeah. So the very first episode that I came up with was me hitting a jug of water that was half full with my hand. That was the sound. And I was falling asleep that night, just like, you know how your brain goes at night sometimes. And that idea just like popped into my head, and I literally woke myself up laughing because it was so stupid and so funny. But so the very next day I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And so the process in doing this is just me following what felt good next, what excited me, what made me laugh. Yeah. And then when I edited it, I think I put the voiceover, probably did it a couple of times. And again, I was drawn to what made me laugh, what interested me. And I think I had that going for a couple of episodes until like my fourth episode, which just exploded. And once that happened, I got a lot of feedback.
Okay.
And it was really cool to hear lots of positive feedback. Generally people on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram are nice to creators.
Right.
The majority of them are very appreciative. I know that I feel like there's a shift, or at least what YouTube and Instagram have been promoting is more negative stuff. But all that to say, the positive feedback that I got was really reassuring. And so there was maybe a little bit of a subconscious shift where I'm like, what does the audience want? So I started kind of following that a little bit.
I'm curious, what kind of comments did you get?
People said it was so funny. They were just mindlessly scrolling through TikTok, and they had to stop and check out all of the other videos. And I don't know. I don't remember any specific comment in general, but there was just very, very encouraging. As I posted more, there were some common commenters where it's like, dude, this is awesome, or best one yet, or dude, I loved how you did this, or you should try this sometime.
I love that.
Yeah, and I actually got tagged by a much bigger creator one time saying, hey, here's some new TikTok creators that you should check out, which was really awesome. New flood of subscribers. I eventually did a TikTok for him, what he recommended. Like he actually suggested something. So I did it like maybe 6 months later. And so that was, but it was just like so cool to have all of that feedback. I feel like if it had not been for COVID, A, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But B, if it had not been for COVID, I probably would have gotten a bigger community together.
Yeah.
Maybe done something externally. sadly, I released 25 episodes and I got burnt out. And I was just like, basically every episode would get more involved. I would spend more and more time. My first episode took like 2 hours, I think. The last episode, I don't even know, like 20, 40, 80 hours. I don't know. It was ridiculous. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a break. I think I released one every week or month or 2 weeks. I can't remember the cadence. But anyways, I ended up stopping. And then I think I waited 2 years and I decided to do lives, and people started giving me feedback again, which is really cool. So I released 5 more episodes. But then after that is where I feel like where we're at now, where you've come in, you've said positive things, and I'm kind of like, I really want to keep going, but what does it mean?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of calls back to, well, what is my creative identity in this? Like maybe I didn't really even know what it was.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of following what my heart felt, what made me laugh, what looked good.
Yeah. So that's when I kind of came in and be like, dude, like I asked him about his process, and it was crazy. Like, and again, like I don't look down on you for this, because I know what this looks like. I have been there myself. I'm still struggling with it, because that's a whole nother, like, perfectionism and like all of that stuff comes in another whole package, but we'll talk about that down the road for sure. But the next step for you, what I saw was like working on like honing the craft of how to efficiently do it, how to efficiently edit, how to efficiently like first writing a quick script or something like that, or have an idea or something, and then, because I've been doing that a lot lately, and that has cut down tremendous amount of time of my editing. So that will be the next step for sure. But it's cool, man. Like I'm glad you did it. I'm praying and hoping he would start again, because y'all need to check it out. The Sound of the Day on TikTok, like brilliant.
It's also on YouTube.
Oh, cool. I don't know that.
I basically copy pasted everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Shoot.
Where were we with this?
So, talk about how I explain creative voice.
You were talking about you were saying how it wasn't my identity, it was more of my creative voice, even though I kind of alluded to that. We'll talk about how I'm more explaining my creative voice than my creative identity, and actually doing
Okay,
things I
actually,
enjoy.
yeah, you can ask me if you don't want to. Like, just ask me, like, what do you think is the difference between, like, you talked earlier about the difference between the creative voice and the identity.
Okay.
Like, how do you deal with it or something?
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll ask you what the difference is to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
and how do you deal with that or something?
Okay. So,
Personal deal with, sorry.
okay, that's okay. So, what would you think would be the difference between a creative voice and a creative identity? I mentioned that. I felt like I was just following whatever felt nice, but then I, produced so many episodes and I really don't know where I'm at. How would you describe the difference between the two?
So, I think we talked about the difference a little bit. The identity is, first of all, saying, okay, I want to get into creating something. This seems like a cool idea. I want to just give it a try. The creative voice, this is the part where it gets super complicated for creatives. Like for me personally, and I think in many people, it's because you have so many influences like around you, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And cinema, like for me, like right now, right now it's video, and like I love watching YouTubers, I love watching movies, I love like dissecting all of the lighting and all of the thought behind it. And then you end up so now you like get inspired, you have an idea, you go write it and you go edit it, like you go you record it, then you go to sit down to edit it, and then now you want yours to look like somebody else's or whatever cool thing. Now this is where your expertise coming to play. Like if you're a really good editor, or if you know how to color grade, like that's where you're gonna shine. or if you don't have experience, that's where you're not gonna shine. So this is where the issue comes now. As a creator, most of the time, creative, you're gonna be struggling with like, well, mine doesn't look exactly how I want it to be, right? And I'm like right now on Sharon stories, I'm not a good color grader. I'm still learning it, and I tried some LUTs, and so far it just looks like crap. And I'm just like, I've actually been struggling with it a little bit. Even my video is supposed to be like how to get unstuck from a creative rut, but I'm actually not at the point today. I'm gonna go home, quickly make some edits, and I'm about to upload it because I'm like, right now, if I were to sit down and try to learn all these things, it's gonna take me much more time to figure it out. And this is time where I could be working on the next video or the next idea, and letting my creative identity, the muscle and all of that work, right? And the color grading skills and all the weaknesses you have with time and repetition will work its way through, is my understanding. And I've heard this from many people. So I think if you simplify the creative identity as, okay, I'm a creative, I need to create. And that is my sole purpose, is to create, and whatever comes out, that's what it's going to come out. And then not get stuck with your unique voice and things like that, because that will develop over time. Because I even looked at your sound of the day stuff, like it evolved as the episodes went,
right,
and the lighting got better, and the movements got better, and things like that. And all of a sudden, like, you were in your element, like people knew that dude is a sound of the day guy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So for me, now that I know what that looks like, I am a little bit more free to just create and put it out.
Okay.
Like, I was talking to my father, like, my first episode, like, he was saying, the audio isn't, like, balanced well. I'm like, I know that, right? But I don't want to go and redo it and re-upload it, because I want it to be the way it is. It was my creative expression with the limited knowledge I had at the time. And that should be a representation of this time right now, or whenever I started. That's what it's supposed to be. Because there's a beauty in watching somebody's progress, like Odyssey, right? And seeing, oh my gosh, right? That's the rawness, the authenticness for me.
That's great. I love how you said that. And I feel like that's very difficult for me to, I don't know, from my history of creating everything, I've always been very perfectionistic about stuff. And I don't release stuff unless I'm satisfied with it. But I think that has taken away from my identity, and I haven't been as free to create. Like, I probably would have come out with a lot more stuff, maybe figured out more ways to express myself if I hadn't been so concerned with the perfectionism at the time.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right, like, it's as a creative person, like, I feel like most of us, like, once we get an idea, that's like the new thing in your head. That needs to be done as soon as possible, because you never know when your next idea is going to come. When that next idea comes, and all of a sudden this beautiful idea you already had is useless because it's no longer exciting. So the trick is learning how to, like, put this thing out as soon as you get the idea, get it out of the way, and, like, because your brain is going to give you another idea. You're a creative. That's how it goes. Right? It comes, and sometimes it doesn't come. Sometimes it comes one after the other, and you have to be ready. And so when you drag this process because of perfectionism, now no longer does this bring joy. It's mostly agony. It's mostly like self-negative talk. It's like, what is perfectionism? But perfectionism is like, oh, this is not good right now. Why is it not good? Because you created it, right? And therefore it's negative. And so you just gotta get it out of the way. That's like my new rule is, like, I should only work on it for like 3 to 4 days. That's it. Unless it's a feature film or something, which I would love to do one day. But you know what I mean? Like, as far as it's not that serious.
That's a hard lesson for me to learn because I don't know. I just have this ingrained perfectionism. My dad is leaps and bounds, orders of magnitude more than I am.
Right, right.
But even so, I think that's a very good way to put it because I think that's probably what got in the way of me releasing more episodes is that I was like, I don't like the way this looks. I think I actually have a whole episode that I edited and I didn't like the way the edit came out. So I didn't even start the voiceover and it's just sitting there. And yeah,
It's good to have, like for me,
I don't know.
like for me, I think with my wife Lizzie, the best thing that has come from her, as far as my creativity is concerned, is her telling me when I'm like, I don't want to put this out. I think I'm gonna scrap this thing, and she's like, No,
No. No.
you must put it out.
That's cool.
I watch you struggle so much, and you like did so much, and yet here you are because of your perfectionism. You're not putting it out. That is
Yeah.
not acceptable. So I love that I have her now. I can say that to her, and she's like, "No, you're gonna put it out," and I'm like, "Oh, great, fine, it's okay," and I'll just
Just do it and move on. And that's a very good point though, that like once you have that idea and you need to get it out, that next idea will come along and will interrupt what you're doing sooner or later. And I think that's what's happened to that lost episode of mine is that I've now been interrupted by other ones and I don't want to go back to it because it's not new anymore. I do have a history of going back eventually and finishing things, but still.
We should talk about it. We should have an episode of how we can approach that, because that to me would help myself a lot.
Yeah.
So
You're
many
talking about like starting and stopping and
like
restarting?
how to restart
How to restart a project.
you start.
Okay. Yeah, I like that idea. I really like that idea.
So did you have something? Sorry.
But yeah, I was just going to move on a little bit, but if you had anything, okay. So what kind of as far as the creative identity versus the creative voice goes, I remember this video that I saw by Dan Mace, wonderful creator. I'm sure most people who are listening to this podcast will know who he is. If not, he is an excellent creator. He now works for Mr. Beast Philanthropy.
Yeah.
He's an incredible video editor, and he recently released a video. I think it was like 2 hours long, right?
3 hours.
Wow. Yeah. But it
Wait, no, 2 hours. I apologize. Yeah.
However long it was long, but it was all about the creative process and how he edits videos. And it was so helpful. This one point that he made, he said that you need to have a log line. And of course, that term log line, I had never heard that before. But what he explained is like he has the idea, he has the general like script kind of like written out and whatever. But what he needs the log line to be is the very basis of what needs to happen, what needs to be shown, and how it needs to, I guess, come together. So there is one long sentence. I think it was a run-on sentence, maybe even half a paragraph.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, no grammar involved.
Right. Yep. As long as it's out there, when you're creating something, you can always go back to your log line and say, that's right. Here is my tether. Here is what will keep me anchored to what the project is. And I think that's huge, not only in a per project basis, but if you are having a genre that you're embarking on, like woodworking or something like that, and you find something that you really enjoy, it might be helpful to put a log line down and say, hey, this is what this project or this series of my creative life is going to look like right now. And then you can refine it as far as like per project basis goes like that. But I just love that log line thing is such an important part of creativity, especially when things get really complicated. Or if you're like you and I, and we can get distracted very easily, it's like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Now let's go back. What were we doing? That's right.
Yeah, that's the way I took the log line, especially and combining this episode is when you're in the midst of a creative project, you can always go back to the log line and like, what's a log line? The log line is, this is my creative identity. What is my creative identity? To create and express what's within. And so as long as you're doing that, and it doesn't matter how perfect or imperfect it is at that point, because the expression is what's important, that moment,
Yeah.
in that time period, for sure. So yeah, I really want to talk about like how we can do this practically. And I think the simplest thing is, the most basic answer I can give you is, creativity is a muscle, right? Before you think about, like, I almost like have come to the point of not worrying about my voice, my creative voice, when it comes to video. Because how the heck am I supposed to know? I didn't go to film school. I've only experience I have is watching other people's videos.
Yeah.
So for me to find that, I still need to create. So I have kind of gone away from like, okay, I didn't get the right shot. Fine, whatever. Can I put it in still in to tell the story? Cool. That's it. Like, maybe it's low standards, many people will say, but like, I spend the time to go film something, and even if it's not perfect, like, the goal is that I had an idea, I wanted to tell this story, and I went out, I embarked on this odyssey of doing it, and then now I need to finish it. That's it. So, so like, if you're a graphic designer, for example, or any kind of creative, like, you need to draw every single day.
Yeah.
You need to, like, because the most important thing is, like, from idea to action needs to be fast.
Yeah.
And the more muscle memory you have, it's like the nerve system, right? The brain tells you go do it, and then you do it, right? And that time needs to be almost instant or like shorter.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, I'm sitting there writing a script and all of that is good, but you need to do it faster. That's why I like Dan Mays, for example. Like, this dude's, he writes everything on a journal, and like, once he's done, and he's out there like recording it, and then he comes back and he edits in one day. I've seen him do it.
That's insane.
But that's because he got so good at in his craft, or more than the craft, so good at like just brain signal to actually doing it, that process.
Yeah, he's done it so many times. He's refined the process, but the neurons in his brain have created this superhighway to when he has that idea, it's like, it's probably subconscious in his body, like his muscle memory just starts to do it.
Yeah.
And when you practice something, when you repeat something enough, that's going to be what happens. Your mind doesn't have to consciously think about it anymore. It subconsciously just happens in your body.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where you want to get to. You want to keep creating. You want to keep doing the thing that you feel that you need to express yourself.
Yeah.
Now, one thing is, like, there's obviously caveats to that. You can't just put out all this stuff if you have a client that you're working with and all this whatever.
Yeah, this is not for money purpose yet.
Yeah, this is being creative in yourself. This is practicing your creative outlet. But yeah, it's something that I've always done, at least in the last year or last couple of years really, is I love playing the piano, and it's something that I've wanted to get better at. I aspire to eventually be a jazz pianist, but I'm never going to get there if I keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
So even if I don't want to, I'm going to sit down at least 4 times a week and do some tinkering around, maybe learn a couple of scales. I know there's a lot more, tons of stuff on YouTube on how to become a better pianist and stuff like that. But just that repetition, and over 1 year, like, I'm like, wow, I didn't know how to do that last year. And just sitting down, repeating this, now I know how to do that. So just honing your craft, repeating it, your mind is going to teach your body how to do it physically, and you're going to be able to do it automatically.
So one thing I got from that is, like, I personally am like thinking about that person, like, as far as piano playing too, because after like listening to our theme song created by Mr. Ben Sheran, I've always wanted to play jazz and like know those chords, but I thought I would never learn it. Like, I've had this notion up until recently, I can't do that. that. Like, and I don't think I can learn it. Like, that's too
Yeah.
complicated. And it's funny, like, recently I realized, like, what am I saying? Like, I figured it out before. I figured out the stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I
You
could
told the story last episode of what you did.
exactly. And so, that brings me to a very interesting topic, which it's not that interesting because it's obvious, I think. But once you understand that you are a creative, what happens is either it comes very naturally and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a creative, I should just start creating. For most people, most creatives, it doesn't happen that way. It's like, what am I even trying? What am I even thinking? How can I even do this? Like, there's so many people better than I'm better than me. I'm not even close to as good as whatever, and you never end up creating. See, once you recognize you're a creative, you should have a grace period where you're like, I don't care what I think. I don't care what other people think about what I'm creating. You give yourself a grace period. You just do it. You create for the sake of creating. Now, if you don't have people you trust that you can show, don't show it. Or just put it online and forget about anybody else what they say. Because it's just a matter of you're creating and you're putting it out. You're creating and putting it out. Or you're just showing it to somebody that you care about.
Yeah, or just making it. I know that there was the artist Washed Out. He's a musical producer now, but that's how he started. He just created music that he liked, that he wanted to listen to, and that's all he did.
Exactly.
And like several years in, he's like, oh, I'll show it to a friend. Ended up being like, he's big, he's huge now. But even if it's just to do that, just so you can listen to it, just so you can look at this thing that you drew, or just so you can experience what you created, just do it.
And if you get a negative criticism or something like that, I mean, let's quickly touch on that. It's just do a quick gauge and see if this is actually helping me or not. Like, if it's helping you, take it. Take the negative criticism or constructive criticism, take it and learn from it and go on, move on. But always gauge, is this advice or is this criticism actually going to benefit me, actually going to help me? If not, give it away, because people don't have a lot of time and people are very bored and they have...
That's stupid.
Exactly.
That's not constructive criticism.
It's not. So, right. Learn the difference between constructive criticism. That's what I was trying to say.
And the online trolls.
All the people you know are trolls. But that's important for sure.
That was the last thing I had on here. You're going to talk about your studio too. But I don't know how to weave that in.
Yeah, I don't even know. We can leave it aside.
We're at almost 40 minutes. So
yeah. So we can.
The next one is just to wrap it up about sharing your stories. We'd love to hear from you, unless there's anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, let's do that. So how do we start that? Make that transition.
Okay, so we just kind of trailed off there about the just do it. Repetition is key. And that's it.
Repetition is key. So we would love to hear from you. If you listen to our last two episodes and you feel like you are a creative or somebody who you trust have told you you're a creative, we would love to know what you're thinking about. How is that process going? What are the things that are going in your mind? Any negative thoughts? We would love to hear. Any positive thoughts? We would absolutely love to hear, because I would love to know like somebody doing it in a positive way, as opposed to like the rest of us doing it the negative way.
I would also love to know what you're doing. Like what is it that you are creating? We'd love to see it, hear it, whatever the case is. Just because it's so interesting to discover how other people create things. Yeah. It's so cool to see the random things that people do. Yeah. Like I was mentioning, those buckets of sand. Like it's so off the wall. It's so out there. I mean, it could be as simple as like, hey, I just learned Mary Had a Little Lamb on the piano. But you're starting to be creative. You're starting to express yourself. So if you have something to share, we'd be open to hearing it.
Absolutely.
Talking about it.
And then the next episode, we will be talking about overcoming creative blocks and challenges. And I'm super excited about that.
Me too. It should be fun.
Because I just want to tell you guys, we are not sitting on these seats with these mics from like like a ton of experience or like we've made it or something like that. No, we are simply
goodness.
coming to you saying we are a fellow creative who loves creativity, but we've struggled alone for the longest time. I have, and I think you have too, in
Yeah.
a certain sense. We just want to do it together, and we want to help people who are, closeted creatives or who even don't know you're a creative. Maybe people in your family or your life put you down so much that you don't even know you have the ability. Our goal is to help you and help each other create and do this expression thing really well, because that's what we were created to do, I think.
Yes. Yep. We are created to create, which is such a cool phrase. But yeah, I'm excited about the next one, overcoming blocks and challenges. I think it's going to be fun to talk about in the fact that I could really use it.
Yeah.
Like to understand
Yeah.
what's your perspective. You can understand what my perspective is. But yeah.
So until next time, keep dreaming, keep creating, and keep exploring your own creative odyssey. See you later.
Thanks, guys. Take care.